Now joining me on the Peerless Boilers Hotline, Peerless builds America's best boilers, the men's head basketball coach for the Virginia Commonwealth University Rams. He was a stellar star in this NCAA tournament last year, and that is Shaka Smart. Shaka, Zach Gelb here, DARPATV.com. Thank you for joining me, and how you doing on this fine evening?
I'm doing terrific. Thanks for having me on, Zach.
Well, thank you for coming on, and I was reading an article yesterday, and it was talking about how your wife went to Harvard, and now she is a professional writer, and it also said in that article that you write down a plethora of quotes since your time at Kenyon. Who is the better writer in your family, your wife or yourself?
My wife is by far the better writer.
Now, I know that you just had a baby. Your wife had a baby. Give me the early scouting report on your kid. Is the baby Shaka Smart? Is the baby Smart going to be a writer or a basketball coach?
Well, we had a daughter, so she probably will take more after my wife than after me. But she'll be whatever she wants to be. I think she's 6 months old right now. I think she's definitely developing to be her own person, and who knows, she'll probably do something different than both of us.
All right, well, let's get to the big news about your program. You reject the Illinois job. What factored into that decision, and how happy are you with staying at VCU?
Well, I'm extremely happy to stay at VCU. It's a great place. Our players are terrific people. I enjoyed working with them, and just really excited about our future. We only lose one player off this year's team, and we got a chance to be very, very good next year.
Now, when I look back when you were a player in college, Harvard and Yale were recruiting you, and you elected not to take the big D1 job, and you went to Kenyon. Does Shaka Smart kind of have a love for an underdog team? Because you look at Illinois, and it's a much bigger job than your program where you're at right now.
Do I have a love for the underdog? No, I wouldn't say that. I mean, I have a love for wherever I'm at. I mean, right now I'm at VCU, and in college I went to the place that I felt was the best fit for me as a student and as a basketball player. So, to me, it's more about relationships. It's more about being somewhere where you can be happy, where you can be successful, and then go from there.
Now, I know your AD denied these reports, but I did see a report out there that VCU is pondering of the fact that they may go to the A-10. I'm not going to ask you if that move is definitely going to happen, but I look at those teams that possibly could be moving to that conference, Butler, George Mason, and your squad. It would be pretty interesting to see the Cinderella stories, the mid-majors of the last decade all in one conference, right?
Well, all that speculation, I think, is a little bit premature. And to be honest with you, Zach, all those decisions are made well above the level of a basketball coach. Those decisions are made at the administrative level. You're talking about the presidents of the universities who have the final say, and then certainly the athletic directors. So, I'm just coaching my team, and whoever is on our schedule, we're going to prepare and do the best job we can to compete with that team and win those games.
Well, let's talk about that team that just lost in the second round of the tournament to Indiana. What was the difference between this year's team and last year's team?
I think last year's team was a better offensive team. We shot the ball better from three, and we had more weapons on offense that could, go out and get you 15, 20 points on a given night. But I think this year's team was a much better defensive team. We led the country in steals. We forced more turnovers than anyone in the country. We certainly were better on the defensive end than we were last year. And, we ran into a very good Indiana team, had a chance to win that game. We're up 3 points with 59 seconds left with our best player at the line shooting two. But you got to give Indiana the credit. They made some big plays down the stretch, and were able to win that game by 2.
Preview this year's recruiting class for me coming into VCU, and do you expect most of your major guys that were on the team last year to stay put with this team coming up next year?
I definitely do. We have one senior, Bradford Burgess, who will be graduating, and we'll certainly miss him. But we did sign his brother, Jordan Burgess, who's one of our incoming freshmen. He's 6'4", very talented guard, and can do a lot of different things. We also signed 2 forwards, Justin Toyo, 6'9", from just outside of Atlanta, can block all kinds of shots. He had multiple triple-doubles this year with points, rebounds, and blocks. And then we signed a big monster in Muhammad Ali Cox, who's 6'6", but about 255 pounds. He looks like he should be playing linebacker at Penn State, but he plays the power forward position. Is going to be terrific here.
We're talking to Shaka Smart, the head basketball coach at VCU. And Shaka, let's go to the games this weekend. You did a great job on CBS. I really loved the material that you gave to Charles Barkley. Calipari, Rick Pitino, it's the battle of the hair. Both of these coaches have been going back and forth with each other, dating back to the beginning of the season. As a coach, this really just has to excite you.
Not really. What excites me is the game, and it excites me watching the players. I don't get so caught up in the coaches. That's something for the media and for people to worry about. The team that wins the game, trust me, is going to be the team that has the players that perform the best. And you're talking about, once you get to this point in the year, all very, very high-level coaches, very successful coaches, guys that are going to work extremely hard to prepare their teams. But again, the game's going to be determined by the players. I think so much in college basketball is made of the coaches. It comes down to the guys out there on the floor.
Now, there's a lot of storylines headed into this game. Obviously, the Calipari and Pitino, their whole feud. You have this big rivalry between Kentucky and Louisville, and the game's being played. It's a Final Four in New Orleans. As a coach, what would your message be to your team about staying focused and preparing and just focusing solely on the game?
I would just talk to the team about being in the moment and understanding that whatever the current moment provides, that's where your focus should be. I think a lot of times the media and even people that mean well, family, friends, sometimes try to take your focus away from right now and try to get you to focus on the future. Maybe certain guys going to the NBA or what's going to happen next, or they try to bring you back to the past. As you mentioned, everyone wants to talk about long-standing relationship or lack thereof between coaches. But that stuff really doesn't matter. Once the ball goes up, all that goes away, and it's about, the best team on the floor getting it done.
Anthony Davis is an incredible player. He's the best player in the nation. Let's say Shaka Smart was in that Louisville Cardinals locker room. How are you preparing for Anthony Davis and getting your team ready?
Well, the first thing I'd do is try to get him in foul trouble. I think in the last game, that was something that it was a big point of emphasis. Actually both games this past weekend, and I thought Indiana did a nice job early in the game getting two quick fouls on Anthony Davis, and he only played 6 minutes in the first half. So that's the first thing, because you're talking about, as you mentioned, the best player in college basketball, the number one pick in the NBA draft coming up this spring. From there, you got to bring him out on the floor. You can't let him roam around right around the basket where he can block everything. You got to make him defend pick and roll way out on the floor. You've got to, use strength against him because, his advantage is certainly length and athleticism.
Now, you look at this Kentucky team, and there's just so many options on the court. Where would you prepare? Where would you start first? And how tough is it when you're preparing for this team going up against them? Because they just have so many options, and they could kill you on so many different levels.
Well, it depends who you have. I mean, with my team, I would prepare a certain way. And certainly with a different team, with a different roster, I would prepare another way. For us, Kentucky doesn't play a lot of guys. So if we had beat Indiana and we had played Kentucky in the Sweet 16, then we would have tried to do what we do, which is press and run and get the game going faster than the opponent wants it to be.
Now, last week, going back to the game that happened when Kentucky was playing and Anthony Davis went down and everyone's heart dropped that had Kentucky going to the championship game in their bracket, he went to the bench at first and then he came back onto the court. But the interesting part to me was Anthony Davis had 4 fouls there. One more foul and he's out of the game. Did you kind of think that was a questionable decision by John Calipari to put him back in the game in foul trouble with virtually 8 minutes to go?
Not at all, because he knows his team. And I think, a lot of times people second-guess coaches, but those people don't know the personnel and the team, the makeup of that team the same way that the head coach does. So I would never think that John Calipari does anything questionable with his team. He's a great coach. He's won a ton of games, and That's why he's been so successful, because he knows what to do.
Zach Gelb here on DARPATV.com in New York, talking to the head coach of the VCU Rams, Shaka Smart, on the Peerless Boilers hotline. Peerless builds America's best boilers. Let's go to the Kansas-Ohio State game. Tyshawn Taylor, he looks out like he's out of the slump, had a big game last week going up against UNC. What would you say to Tyshawn one-on-one so he can continue this success going forward in this tournament and not think about his previous struggles going back earlier in the year?
Just be aggressive. He's got to be aggressive. He's got to be in attack mode. He's going to make some mistakes, as any player will, out there on the floor in a 40-minute game, but that's okay. I think a lot has been made of, maybe a turnover here or a missed shot there, but he's also played really, really well at times, and he's had a heck of a season. If you look at his whole season, his whole body of work. So he was terrific in the Carolina game, and, there's certainly no reason to believe he won't be great against Ohio State.
Jared Sullinger going up against Thomas Robinson. That matchup's going to be great. Break down that big man matchup for me.
Yeah, I think, it'll be a really interesting matchup in that, they're both terrific players. They're both guys that have done phenomenal things all year long. But, to me, Kansas needs Thomas Robinson to play at an extremely high level, even more than Ohio State needs Jared Sullinger, particularly in the department of just scoring the basketball. Robinson's going to have to be at like certainly a 20 and 15 clip, or something like that. For Sullinger, the biggest thing is he needs to stay in the game. He needs to stay out of foul trouble. And, obviously they're going to get him the ball, and it puts pressure on Kansas' defense. But I think Ohio State has more scoring weapons around here.
But I feel like a lot of people, they forget about Deshaun Thomas, and he's having a great year as well for OSU. This guy, he's flying under the radar a little bit because everyone's getting caught up in the Sullinger and Robinson matchup. Deshaun Thomas could have a breakout game for OSU.
He's having a terrific year. He's having a terrific tournament. He's doing great, and, he's leading them in scoring in the NCAA tournament. A guy that's, he was very highly ranked coming out of high school, and someone that, some people have forgotten about. But, you're talking about a guy who's probably a future NBA player.
Now let's go to Aaron Kraft. I'm watching him the other day, and when I was watching him with the passion that he had on and off the court, especially when he was in some foul trouble and he was sitting on the bench, one image came to mind, and that was the video of you, Shaka Smart, running up and down in practice last year, going all out with your players, sliding from the half-court line to the free throw line. Do you admire Aaron Kraft's passion? Because he kind of reminded me of you, Shaka.
Yeah, I admire him. I think he's a great player. I love the way that he plays the game. He really attacks. He leads. He's not at all motivated by statistics or any type of selfish motives. So I have a lot of admiration for him. He's someone that a lot of coaches would love to have.
Final one here as we're talking to VCU coach Shaka Smart. And Shaka, prediction coming up this week for these games coming up on Saturday. I have Kentucky and Kansas going all the way to the national championship with Calipari's squad winning it all the way. How about you?
Well, way to go out on a limb there,
Well, I'll tell you this. I picked that in the beginning of the season. I have Seth Greenberg also coming up on the show tonight, but we pre-taped that spot, and he told me that he likes Kentucky going up against Ohio State with Kentucky winning it all. So where do you like Shaka coming up this Saturday?
I'm going to say Kentucky and Ohio State in the national championship game Monday night, playing for it all, and I'm going to say the Buckeyes get it done with the upset to win it all.
Let's put a wager on this game, Shaka. This is what me and Seth did. I'll give you 12 New York bagels if I'm right, and if you're right, you'll send me some VCU clothes. Is that good?
Well, it is against NCAA rules for coaches to put any type of wager on any type of games, but certainly, either way the game goes, if you send me your address, I'll send you a VCU shirt.
Shaka, thanks so much. I appreciate the time. Be well and enjoy these games coming up on Saturday.
Okay, you take care.